Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight's show was recommended, but it was recommended in a completely different light than the one I wound up running down. Originally, it was going to be on fasting, which was suggested by my wife, Lourdes. But halfway into starting the show, I got sidetracked and started looking into not so much fasting as what happens when you're done fasting. In other words, when you eat. So, tonight's show, instead of being on fasting, is going to be on something called That's Not Food. Back on March 4th, 2017, I did a show called Drink Your Poison. It made going to the grocery store a whole different mission. In order to do a show, I have to do a lot of reading. For the poison show, I read about things being put into our food that is downright harmful for your health. Things like high fructose corn syrup, which is in just about everything. It's cheap, it tastes good, and it will slowly kill you. HFCS causes your intestines to leak fluid into your abdominal cavity. High fructose corn syrup and cane sugar are not biochemically identical or processed in the same way by your body. High fructose corn syrup is an industrial food product, and it is far from natural or naturally occurring. It's extracted from corn stalks through a top-secret process. When you think corn sweetener, you think of the yellow part of the corn, not the stalk. When people began discovering that high fructose corn syrup was dangerous, instead of removing it from products, manufacturers changed the name. It goes by the name new fructose isolate, or corn sugar. Aspartame is made up of three chemicals: aspartic acid, phenylalanine, and methanol. Methanol is a poisonous substance that is bad for the central nervous system, and it can cause blindness, coma, and death. It was originally considered to be a poison up until the day that Donald Rumsfeld became Secretary of State. Then it was magically no longer toxic. Rumsfeld was the CEO of Monsanto, which is the manufacturer of aspartame. According to researchers and physicians studying the adverse effects of aspartame, the following chronic illnesses can be triggered or worsened by ingesting the substance: brain tumors, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, chronic fatigue syndrome, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, mental retardation, lymphoma, birth defects, fibromyalgia, and diabetes. In order to keep people buying this dangerous chemical, they changed aspartame to amino sweet. Well, anything labeled as being diet or sugar-free should typically be avoided at all cost. The sugar comes from sugar cane. All those other sweeteners come from chemicals. A fluoride is put into our water supply and toothpaste because it just might make your teeth stronger. The folks doing this will tell you fluoride is not a drug, but rather it's a nutrient. And since when is the toxic waste byproduct of phosphate fertilizer industry and the aluminum or steel industry a nutrient? They all mumble something about, well, you don't have to drink the water. Try that. Try going for weeks without water. Ugh. There's something else to consider. Those living in communities without fluoride in their water have virtually the same rates of tooth decay as those living in fluoridated communities. And then you have all those folks who drink nothing but bottled water. If you get too much fluoride, it causes fluorosis, a discoloration of your teeth. It also makes them brittle. You now run the risk of fracturing a tooth, and that is very painful. I know. I broke a few teeth, not knowing why. I drink nothing but bottled water today, and I haven't broken any teeth since we changed. Hydrogenated oils are liquids that are treated with chemicals that turn them into solid at room temperature. It's in a lot of our food, and it has some bad effects on your health. Food manufacturers aren't concerned with your health. Their job is to sell food products. If you have a health problem as a result, well, that's your problem. You probably grew up downwind from a nuclear plant. You won't find food companies offering to pay for your medical bills if you have a heart attack from eating hydrogenated oil. They are basically passing the buck and demanding that you pay for the health consequences caused by their food additives. In fact, they're working hard to pass legislation that would outlaw lawsuits against food companies. As people have discovered the nasty side effects of these chemical additives, instead of removing them from our food supply, the chemical companies just change the names. Just because it's called by a different name doesn't change the fact that it's bad for you. When my wife and I go to the store, we read the contents listed on the product ingredients. It takes more time to shop, but at the end of each week, we both feel a lot better. Just by eliminating these few items from our diet, we've improved how we feel. So what else are people putting into their bodies that is either bad for them or just plain weird? Now let's have a look. In 1984, there was a set of commercials on TV where three old ladies enter a fast food restaurant and one exclaims, "Where's the beef?" Clara Peller was the vocal member of the trio. From then on, she became the focal point of a lot of commercials, and she even showed up in a movie. There was more than just one jab at the competition here. Wendy's hamburgers had more beef in their small hamburger than either McDonald's or Burger King had in their big burgers. And Wendy's was letting the world know. At the time, McDonald's was running a commercial claiming 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, pickle, tomato on a sesame seed bun. I can't get the jingle out of my head, even after all of these years. Well, it turned out McDonald's didn't use all beef patties, so Wendy's stepped up their campaign. McDonald's changed their commercial, claiming 2 all-meat patties, and the meat was anything but beef. McDonald's was using horse meat and kangaroo, and there was a lot of soy in them as well. Well, today McDonald's has improved their meat, but I avoid eating it at any of their facilities. The last time I ate at McDonald's, I felt ill for hours afterwards. I watched several videos where people left food or fast food hamburgers out for as long as 4 months. McDonald's hamburgers looked the same as the day they were made. They didn't rot. The explanation given was that the sandwich was dry due to manufacturing process and due to cooking. Everything rots. That's a part of nature. Otherwise, we'd be knee-deep in leftover garbage. And if the McDonald's hamburger wouldn't rot sitting on a shelf, would it really digest going through your system? In order to manufacture these hamburger patties and then ship them all over the country, McDonald's used something called pink slime. The meat and meat byproducts and anything that fell into the machine was ground up into something that looked like paste, and then it was processed using ammonia gas to kill bacteria. The meat looked like a huge cylinder of pink toothpaste as it was squirted out into the processing machine. Then chemicals were added to make the meat look like meat. They also added a lot of sodium or salt as preservative. You need salt in your diet to stay healthy, but not in the amounts being shoved into fast food hamburgers. Well, McDonald's wasn't the only villain using this weird meat product. Burger King used the same nasty meat product, but their burgers weren't quite as dry, so they did tend to mold up after a few weeks. You need 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day to stay healthy. McDonald's Big Breakfast with Hotcakes, which you get scrambled eggs, sausage, hash browns, and a small stack of pancakes, has 2,260 milligrams of sodium and 1,150 calories. And that's just one meal. That's well over the recommended sodium intake for the entire day. Well, Starbucks turkey and Swiss sandwich with crispy leaf lettuce is 390 calories, which seems harmless, but a quick ingredient check reveals salt in the turkey breast and Swiss and the wheat bread. 1,140 milligrams of sodium in all. That leaves you 10 milligrams for the rest of the day. Subway's spicy Italian pepperoni and salami, which has 2 notoriously salty meats. A 6-inch sub without sauce or cheese has 1,520 milligrams of sodium. A foot-long with mayo clocks in at 3,200 milligrams of sodium. KFC's Variety Big Box Meal provides nutritional information for individual items. A drumstick, a crispy strip, whatever that is, an individual box of popcorn chicken, 2 home-style sides, and a biscuit, along with a 32-ounce drink. Comes to a daily sodium maximum with more than 3,000 milligrams of salt and more than 1,400 calories. If you eat at fast food restaurants 3 times a day, and I know people who do, you consume around 3 to 5 times as much salt as you need to be healthy. And what does all that extra salt do to your body? Well, to begin with, you can develop hypertension. That's high blood pressure. Fluids follow sodium. That's why you dry meat with salt. It draws the moisture out of the meat. So, if your body is full of salt, you absorb more water to balance your metabolism. You'll be a giant saltwater sponge. You might develop heart disease. Hypertension means your heart is working harder to pump blood. Anytime you work a muscle, it gets bigger. If your heart gets bigger, it has no place to grow to. This leads to all kinds of problems. Too much sodium will also cause calcium to be leached out of your bones, which will lead to osteoporosis, or brittle bones. How about kidney failure? Too much sodium causes calcium to enter your blood system, which is then filtered out in your kidneys. The kidneys become overworked, which leads to kidney failure, which leads to dialysis. None of this sounds like a good healthy lifestyle. Yet, people will continue eating these high-sodium meals because, well, they have to eat. And since the food is being put out there, it must be okay, right? After all, it's against the law to poison people. Eating fast food has been linked to the following health conditions. Type 2 diabetes. According to the National Institute of Health, fast food consumption is strongly associated with insulin resistance. This greatly increases an individual's risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Obesity. The NIH also explains that fast food consumption may lead to obesity. One study found that a person who eats fast food at least 2 times a week will gain at least 10 pounds of extra weight. Cardiovascular disease. Having an unhealthy diet is the leading contributor to cardiovascular disease. This condition is caused by the buildup of plaque in the arteries and may lead to heart failure. Stroke. A poor diet like one obtained from fast food often leads to high blood pressure, which in turn high blood pressure is the leading risk factor for a stroke. Cancer. According to Corporate Accountability International, 1/3 of cancers are related to poor diet. This is often paired with the fact that obesity is closely linked with cancer of the colon, kidneys, and esophagus. The children who regularly consume fast food are often suffering even more than adults because their condition only worsens with age. Like adults, children have an increased risk for obesity and type 2 diabetes when eating fast food, says the NIH. Some studies have also shown that children who eat fast food regularly also have a higher risk for developing asthma, hypertension, and high cholesterol. Okay, so you shouldn't eat fast food, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. Once in a while, my wife and I will run out and enjoy a hamburger, fries, maybe some iced tea. Once in a while, like maybe once or twice a month. Not every day. Definitely never 3 times a day. What can you do? Well, you can eat at home, or you can take food with you. That's what I did for 24 years. I started out like most Border Patrol agents by eating my meals in one of our few restaurants that were open all night. We had a Juleps and a Denny's, and that was it. And they were like a block apart. On day shift, we had a couple of more places to eat, but only 2 restaurants on the south side of town where I worked. Then one day, they opened a Bill Miller's Barbecue. It was different from all the other places, so a lot of agents and police officers flocked to the restaurant for lunch every day. An officer found a used Band-Aid in his sandwich. Yuck. Then, someone else found something in his meal not on the menu. The term booger in a box was bantered about a lot. No, it's not. That was it. I stopped eating at any restaurant while in uniform. I do drink a lot of coffee while on duty, but I hope the heat killed anything my digestive tract couldn't handle. I carried my lunch from then on, so I knew what was in my food. Well, mostly. I learned about processed meat and started looking for things to make food with that I could trust. It's been a long learning process. Well, you could grab a salad from the store, put it in a lunchbox, and have a healthy lunch. But then there were those nasty bugs showing up on lettuce here lately. The same week that the CDC announced its E. coli investigation, the Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services, which is FDA part of, released a report concluding that the agency didn't always have an efficient, effective food recall process. These faults at the time translated into large delays in the removal of unsafe products from the marketplace. On December 13th, 2018, Adams Brothers Farming Incorporated in Santa Barbara County recalled red leaf lettuce, green leaf lettuce, and cauliflower that had been harvested on November 27th through the 30th, 2018, because they may have been contaminated with E. coli. E. coli bacteria normally lives in the intestines of healthy people and animals. Most varieties of E. coli are harmless or will cause relatively brief bouts of diarrhea. But a few particularly nasty strains, such as E. coli 0157H7, can cause severe abdominal cramps, bloody diarrhea, and vomiting. Ugh. So how do you get E. coli contamination from vegetables? Well, how about by spraying manure on the plants as a fertilizer? Yep, that's one way the bacteria from the intestines of cattle could wind up in your salad. Then there are those gene splicing experiments being conducted at places like Monsanto and other chemical companies. Why would they splice E. coli to a seed? Well, as a carrier for other genes. If you want to make drought-resistant seeds, you need to get a seed to accept genes from other places. One way to do this is to splice several different genes together, and one of these just happened to be the E. coli bacteria. I'm sure the companies doing this genetically modified work are taking all precautions necessary. Right. Who regulates these companies anyway? Well, the FDA, or Food and Drug Administration. A lot of the top executives working at the FDA retire from government service and, well, then they go to work for the companies they were supposed to be regulating. I'm sure I'm not the only one who sees a small problem here. Then there's the funding for the FDA. A lot of their money comes straight from the companies they're supposed to be governing. March 21st, 2013, Congress passed the Monsanto Protection Act that was slipped into a short-term budget resolution. This dangerous rider, found in Section 735 of the bill, would create a precedent-setting limitation on judicial review of genetically engineered crops, allowing them to be planted without federal safeguards in place that protect our environment, our families, the farmers who plant them, and citizens. So if the same company, chemical company, were to splice a gene into a plant that caused people to start growing tails, there was no one in government who was going to stop them. Monsanto has created a myriad of products that have been banned in several countries because of their proven dangers to human health and the environment. One being the recombinant bovine growth hormone, RBGH, While RBGH increases milk production in cows, it also causes painful mastitis, infection, and reproductive problems in animals. Consequently, the hormone has been banned in European Union and Canada because of the large amounts of pus and blood found in RBGH milk, and because of potential links to cancer. So Monsanto is developing a gene to make cows produce more milk. In 2016, more than 43 million gallons of milk were dumped in fields, manure lagoons, and into animal feed in the first 8 months of 2016, according to data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There was too much milk, so it had to be dumped. This did not include the millions of gallons of milk bought by the government in order to ease the loss to dairy farmers. If there was too much milk to begin with, why do we need a gene to make cows produce more milk? And if this gene is causing health issues with the cattle, what might it be doing to those of us who drink it? How do we know that gallon of moo juice is free from genetically modified organisms, or GMOs? Well, there was a bill mandating GMO labeling on food and beverages produced, which was signed into law in July 1916. The law puts the responsibility of making some difficult distinctions in the hands of the USDA, Agricultural Marketing Service. It's up to them to define the products that the labels will apply to. The amount of genetically modified ingredients that would require a label, and what exactly the label would look like. So until they get their act together, we might be consuming as much as 49% GMOs and not even know it. How many GMOs does it take before we start becoming genetically modified as well? The American Academy of Environmental Medicine urges doctors to prescribe non-GMO diets for all of their patients. They cite animal studies showing organ damage, gastrointestinal and immune system disorders, accelerated aging, and infertility. Human studies show how genetically modified food can leave material behind inside of us, possibly causing long-term problems. Genes inserted into GM soy, for example, can transfer into the DNA of bacteria living inside of us. And the toxic insecticide produced by GM corn was found in the blood of pregnant women and their unborn fetuses. By mixing genes from totally unrelated species, genetic engineering unleashes a host of unpredictable side effects. Moreover, irrespective of the type of genes that are inserted, the very process of creating a GM plant can result in massive collateral damage that produces new toxins, allergens, carcinogens, and nutritional deficiencies. Most of the health and environmental risks of GMOs are ignored by the government, superficial regulations, and safety assessments. The reason for this tragedy is largely political. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, for example, doesn't require a single safety study, doesn't mandate labeling of GMOs, and allows companies to put their GM food onto the market without ever notifying the agency. Their justification was the claim that they had no information showing that GM foods were substantially different. But that was a lie. The secret interagency memos made public by a lawsuit show that the overwhelming consensus, even among the FDA's own scientists, was that GMOs can create unpredictable, hard-to-detect side effects. The scientists who discovered problems with GMOs have been attacked, gagged, fired, threatened, and denied funding. The journal Nature acknowledged that a large block of scientists denigrate research by other legitimate scientists in a knee-jerk, partisan, emotional way that is not helpful in advocating knowledge. Attempts by media to expose problems are also often censored. Whereas sustainable non-GMO agriculture methods used in developing countries have conclusively resulted in yield increases of 79% or higher, GMOs do not, on average, increase yields at all. This was evident in the Union of Concerned Scientists' 2009 report called Failure to Yield, the definitive study to date on GM crops and yields. And with that, I am going to take a brief pause and rest my throat and drink some coffee, so don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs. Coffee, nectar of the gods. And at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, you'll find coffee made the right way, one delicious cup at a time. Stop on by 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. Are you taking care of your skin, or are you going to wait and see how time treats you? Take care today by contacting Lourdes James, Independent Beauty Consultant, at 956-723-3019. Don't let time get the best of you. Did you go out UFO hunting and couldn't focus on the sky? Swing on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle Del Norte, right across from the Embassy Suites. That's not a weather balloon, that's a flying saucer. This is Arkanasa Radio you've been listening to. And welcome back to the show. And yes, indeed, I did go to Optica del Norte just the other week. Now I'm just waiting for the new lenses to get in so I can start focusing on what I'm trying to read here again. The lenses that I had were the kind that darken when you go outside, and for some odd reason one of the lenses is separating from itself, and so I've got this huge area that I look through that I can't focus on. Geez. Modern problems. Oh well. The International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology for Development, the IAASTD, report authorized by more than 400 scientists and backed by 58 governments stated that GM crop yields were highly variable, and in some cases the yields declined. The report noted that assessment of the technology lags behind its development. Information is anecdotal and contradictory and uncertain about possible benefits, and damage is unavoidable. They determined that current GMOs have nothing to offer the goals of reducing hunger and poverty, improving nutrition, health, and rural livelihoods, and facilitating social and environmental sustainability. On the contrary, GMOs divert money and resources that would otherwise be spent on more safe, reliable, and appropriate technologies. The trouble that some of these chemical companies have is you can't put a patent on an ear of corn unless you mess with it genetically. Then you can patent the corn and you can charge people for growing your corn. So that's why they're coming up with all of these GMO crops. It's all about the dollar. A lot of companies went ahead and started putting labels saying non-GMO products, but the law is still in limbo until it gets sorted out by the lawmakers who, all some reason, get handouts from the companies they're supposed to be protecting us from. When you think you see the light at the end of the tunnel, the farmers in Oregon can finally get a win in their fight against companies like Monsanto. House Bill 2739 is under consideration, and if passed, it would allow farmers and landowners to sue biotech patent holders like Monsanto for essential trespassing on their property. The seeds planted in one field can spread across the fence into the neighbor's crops, thus contaminating non-GMO crops. But how much money do farmers hand out to these folks in Washington? How many lobbyists do the farmers have? Each year, companies like Monsanto hand out money as gifts to members of both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Have you ever wondered how somebody who's making $190,000 a year can become a millionaire? Then there are the products people eat because advertisers say they're better for your health. Let's look at one of my favorite products. Butter versus margarine. Margarine was originally manufactured to fatten up turkeys. When it killed the turkeys, the people who had put the money into the research wanted to get their investment back. So they put their heads together and tried to figure out what they could do. Margarine was a white substance with absolutely no food appeal, so they added yellow coloring and sold it to people to use in place of butter. Both butter and margarine have about the same number of calories. Butter is slightly higher in saturated fats, coming in at 8 grams, compared to 5 grams for margarine. Eating margarine can increase heart disease in women by as much as 53% over eating the same amount of butter, according to a recent Harvard medical study. Eating butter increases the absorption of many other nutrients in our food. Butter has many nutritional benefits where margarine has a very few, and it only has these because they were added and they're synthetic. Butter tastes much better than margarine, and it can enhance the flavors of other foods. Butter has been around for centuries, whereas margarine has been around for less than 100 years. The negative aspects of margarine are it's very high in trans fatty acids. It triples your risk of coronary heart disease. Margarine increases the total cholesterol and LDL, that's the bad stuff, and it lowers your HDL cholesterol, which is the good stuff. Margarine increases the risk of cancer by up to 5 times. It lowers the quality of breast milk. Margarine decreases your immune response. But Just about every so-called health-conscious person will tell you they eat only margarine because it's better for you. Do you remember when eggs were good for you? Then they were bad for you? Then they were good for you? Hydrogenated oil is made by forcing hydrogen gas into oil at high pressure. Both animal and vegetable fat can be and are hydrogenated. In general, the more solid the oil is, the more hydrogenated it is. You know, hydrogen, the stuff that blew the Hindenburg to pieces. And margarine is hydrogenated. Hydrogenated oil comes from a whole host of health issues. There's nothing wrong with sugar. It's a natural occurring substance with a few tweaks that can cause problems, but mostly it's better than that stuff chemical companies are pushing. The biggest problem with sugar is the overuse of it. A 12-ounce can of soda contains about 33 grams of sugar. A 16-ounce bottle of soft drink has 44 grams of sugar. Most colas have about 39 grams. Many sports drinks have 21 grams of sugar. The American Heart Association recommends that women take in no more than 6 teaspoons of sugar per day, which comes to about 25 grams of sugar, and that men get no more than 9 teaspoons of sugar per day, or 38 grams. That's 1 can of soda. That's all the sugar you should take in a day. The trouble is there's sugar in a lot of other products people consume every day. So by drinking 1 can of soda, you've used up your sugar allowance. But I've known people who drink 6 to 8 sodas a day. That's a lot of sweetener in their blood supply. Eating sugar gives your brain a huge surge of a feel-good chemical called dopamine, which explains why you're more likely to crave a candy bar at 3 o'clock in the afternoon than, say, an apple or a carrot. Whole foods like fruits and vegetables don't cause the brain to release as much dopamine, and your brain starts to need more and more sugar to get that same feeling of pleasure. The studies show that sugar consumption can increase your risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis. The sugar attaches to protein in your bloodstream and creates harmful molecules called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. These molecules make your skin age. They have been shown to damage collagen and elastin in your skin, which protein fibers that keep your skin firm and youthful. An abundance of added sugar may cause your liver to become resistant to insulin, which is an important hormone that helps turn sugar in your bloodstream into energy. When you eat excess sugar, the extra insulin in your bloodstream can affect your arteries, part of your body's circulatory system. It causes their walls to grow faster than normal, and they get tense, which adds stress to your heart and damages it over time. This can lead to heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. Research also suggests that eating less sugar can help lower your blood pressure, a major risk factor for heart disease. Plus, people who eat a lot of added sugar, at least 25% of their calories coming from sugar, are twice as likely to die of heart disease as those whose diet include about 10% total calories from added sugar. When you eat, your pancreas pumps out insulin. But if you're eating way too much sugar and your body stops responding properly to insulin, your pancreas starts pumping out even more insulin. Eventually, your overworked pancreas will break down and your blood sugar levels will rise, setting you up for type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So if you're going to cut down on your sugar intake, does that mean you should look for substitutes? Well, honey is a sweet and tastes great, and you can use it as a substitute sweetener in just about everything. When I make a gallon of iced tea, I use 1/3 of a cup of sugar and 1/3 of a cup of honey. Tastes better than anything you'll buy in the store. Well, if Monsanto keeps going the way they've been, there won't be any bees left in order to make honey. That huge bee die-off has been linked to chemical neonicotinoid pesticide. Despite an ever-growing sales volume year after year, Monsanto's genetically modified soybeans aren't helping farmers produce greater yields, nor are they helping the planet. This transgenic crop, which is heavily doused in neonicotinoid pesticides, is a leading cause of the bee death phenomenon known as colony collapse disorder, which means it's also a significant threat to the entire food supply. In many cases, there is no difference in soybean yield when soybean seed was treated with neonicotinoids versus not receiving any insect control treatment. This was admitted by the Environmental Protection Agency. Well, I started baking right after I retired. I started out making cookies because, well, they're easy to make and I like cookies. Then I tried branching out a bit. Pizza dough and pie crusts and baking cakes and things. And now I make bread. I mix all the ingredients and I knead it. Literally. I let it rise and then I punch it down again. The whole process takes about 6 hours. Most of this time is just waiting for the dough to rise. It has to rise twice. The bread is well worth all that work. It tastes so much better than anything you'll find in the store. Well, I keep hearing people talk about how they're going gluten-free because it's so much better for them and it will lead to world peace and blah, blah, blah. This whole gluten-free diet fad is way too much like tree huggers and flower children for me. When celebrities start yammering about their new gluten-free lifestyle, I want to leave the planet. It will cause me to run into the kitchen and immediately bake a loaf of bread just to show them. Well, I did some digging. Gluten is the part of bread that holds things together. It's like a mesh that all the fibers get trapped in. Alton Brown has a visual aid. It's a huge frame with ropes and bungee cords running back and forth. Well, you'll have to watch the TV show Good Eats if you want to see it. So gluten is what makes a loaf of bread, not a pile of crumbs. Then someone came out saying they were allergic to gluten, and the whole world came screeching to a halt. To begin with, no one is allergic to gluten. And I'll pause here so that the people can start screaming and yelling. No one is allergic to gluten. There are those who have a digestion problem that is triggered by the consumption of gluten. It makes them ill, and once the gluten is removed from their diet, their health improves. But they're not allergic to gluten. So I had to try to find out why people have been eating bread for, about the last 9,000 years. Then all of a sudden, in the last few years, people found it difficult to eat bread. One theory is that the people with this intolerance have been using antibiotics recently, or for long periods of time, and this has led to their digestive bacteria becoming messed up. Have you ever noticed when you use antibiotics, they make you a little bit sick? Food just seems to pass right through you without slowing down. This is because antibiotics kill all the bacteria, whether good or bad. kind of like using a nuclear bomb to stop a bank robbery. Yes, the bad guys are all dead, but so are all the hostages. You digest food using bacteria in your digestive tract. Another theory says that kids are receiving wheat in their diets before they're advanced enough to process it. This is leading to them developing an intolerance to gluten. Then there's the change in the grains that we grow. They have found there's a particular peptide strain in the gluten molecule, not the gluten itself, that is the culprit of people's distress. It is theorized that this peptide strand wasn't present in ancient varieties of wheat. Something new that didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago. This sounds to me as if one of these chemical companies churned out seeds that have things attached to them that are just now becoming a problem. There is hope for those who love bread and hate all this gluten-free trouble. If you make sourdough bread, the process of allowing the bread to ferment and rise causes the peptide to break loose from the gluten molecule. You can also buy flour that is still made from grains that don't contain this peptide, but it costs more and it's a little bit hard to find. Of course, you can order it from where else? Amazon.com. I just had to add this next one. It was covered in the show, Drink Your Poison, but man, it was such a weird thing for the FDA to look at and say, yeah, let's put this into people's diets. In January 1996, the FDA approved Olestra as a food additive. Cut out the unhealthy cooking oil. Olestra found its way into just about everything from ice cream to French fries. But Olestra proved to be a greedy chemical. It not only removed unwanted fat from food, but it also negated the body's ability to absorb essential vitamins. Side effects included cramps, gas, loose bowels, and sudden uncontrollable bowel movement. Let me say that again. Sudden, uncontrollable bowel movement. There you are out on a date, and whammo, you go to the bathroom right then and there. Number 3 in your shorts. Number 3 is number 2 that comes out like number 1. Well, the FDA has kept Olestra as a legal food additive even to this day, though they leave its health implications in the hands of the individual consumers. Danger Will Robinson. You'd better read the additives on the food you're buying to make sure there's no Olestra in the ingredients, or that sudden uncontrolled bowel movement will be in your future. I hope that just that one thought will get people to read those ingredients. My wife and I don't buy light anything. One time many years ago we had bought some supposedly light products. One was light mayonnaise. It tasted the same as regular mayonnaise, and so we used it to make our sandwiches. One night I was in a hurry and I just left the knife laying in the sink without washing it. The next day I tried to clean the gunk off the blade. It was like trying to scrape off paint. The mayonnaise had turned to some kind of a hard yellow gunk. That was the last time we bought anything with the word light in the label. Nutrition claims such as light and low fat are common on everything from salad dressing to soup to cheese and other dairy products. The federal government has established definitions that dictate when these labels can be used. Under federal rules, products labeled light or described as reduced in calories or low in fat must have a 25% fewer calories or fat than the product they're being compared against. But light can also be used to describe the products that are light in color or light in taste, as long as these distinctions are clearly indicated on the package. Although it may seem like a substantial amount, 25% reduction in calories actually doesn't add up to that much, according to Haley Barton, a clinical nutritionist based out of Vancouver. It's not a low-calorie food choice, she said. She doesn't recommend light products for anyone. Study after study has shown that consumers who eat light food items will actually consume more than if they had stuck with the regular version of the same product. In one well-known study, published in the Journal of Marketing Research, participants were given the choice of 2 bowls of M&Ms. One which was the regular version of the product and one that was labeled low-fat. Researchers found the participants on an average ate nearly 30% more of the low-fat M&Ms. I, for one, will never eat low-fat M&Ms. They can't possibly taste good. And speaking of marketing, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. Would you believe that was what most of us are being told about breakfast all came from a single quote from a 1917 article in Good Health, which has been said to be the oldest health magazine in the world. Lena Cooper was the first person to tell us that breakfast is the most important meal of the day because it's the first meal we consume that should start us out on the right foot. Cooper continued to say that breakfast food should be easy to digest, full of nutrients, enjoyed by the whole family, and not to exceed 500 calories. During the campaign, which marketers called Eat a Good Breakfast, Do a Better Job, grocery stores handed out pamphlets that promoted the importance of breakfast, while radio advertisements announced that nutritional experts say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Ads like these were key to the rise of cereal, a product invented by a man named John Harvey Kellogg, who was a deeply religious doctor who believed that cereal would both improve America's health and keep them from having nasty desires for things like sex. I'll bet you didn't know a bowl of cereal had so much power. I like coffee. And of course the best coffee comes from the Organic Man Coffee Trike. But that's another story. I like coffee in my coffee. If you've read any of my books, just about every single one makes reference to drinking coffee. No cream, no sugar, no flavorings. I drink coffee because I like coffee. Not those fancy drinks people order that has more than 2 syllables. I did order a cappuccino one time, but we got to talking back and forth and I wound up with a cup of weasel poo coffee. It wasn't bad. Good to the last droppings. Now, some folks will order a little coffee in their creamer, and the creamer they use is unhealthy to say the least. The problem with coffee creamer is, to begin with, there's no cream. They don't even call it creamer sometimes. They call it coffee whitener. Might as well just pour paint into your coffee. Many brands are packaged with trans fats, also known as partially hydrogenated soybean and cottonseed oil. A study by PLOS One showed this scary ingredient can diminish memory in adults under 45 years of age. Consumption of the ingredient also increases your risk of heart disease. Hence, the FDA officially banned the ingredient in food products in June 2018. Although the ban prevents new products from being made with artificial trans fats, you may still see residual products like those from Nestle Coffee Mate on the shelves with this scary ingredient until their inventory runs out. They made so much of this nasty chemical, the FDA is allowing them to burn through the excess by selling it to the consumers. Decaffeinated coffee is for sissies. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that, but come on. If you're going to drink coffee and stop pretending. Caffeine is not the problem for most people. Caffeine is found in almost every commercial fat-burning supplement, and for good reason. It's one of the few natural substances proven to aid fat burning. Several studies show that caffeine can boost your metabolism rate by 3 to 11%. Other studies indicate that caffeine can specifically increase fat burning by as much as 10% in obese individuals and 29% in lean people. Caffeine stimulates your nervous system, signaling fat cells to break down into body fat. It also increases epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, levels in your blood. This fight-or-flight hormone which prepares your body for intense physical exertion. Caffeine breaks down body fat, making free fatty acids available as fuel. Alzheimer's disease is the most common neurodegenerative disease and the leading cause of dementia worldwide. This condition usually affects people over 65, and there is no known cure. However, there are several things you can do to prevent this disease from occurring in the first place. This includes the usual suspects like eating healthy and exercising, but drinking coffee may be incredibly effective as well. Several studies show that coffee drinkers have up to a 65% lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. And seeing as I'm now over 60, I'm going to deduct my coffee from my taxes as being a health drink. If only it were doable. The IRS would probably charge me extra tax because I enjoy coffee too much. Some kind of a luxury tax. Parkinson's disease is the second most common neurodegenerative condition, right behind Alzheimer's. It's caused by the death of dopamine-generating neurons in your brain. As with Alzheimer's, there is no known cure, which makes it that much more important to focus on prevention. The studies show that coffee drinkers have a much lower risk of Parkinson's disease, with a risk reduction ranging from 32 to 60%. In this case, the caffeine itself appears to be the beneficial, as people who drink decaf do not have a lower risk of Parkinson's. Let me say that again. People who drink decaf do not have a lower risk of Parkinson's. Cancer is one of the world's leading causes of death. It is characterized by uncontrolled cell growth in your body. Well, coffee appears to be a protective against two types of cancer, liver and colorectal cancer. Liver cancer is the third leading cause of cancer death in the world, while colorectal cancer ranks fourth. The studies show that coffee drinkers have up to a 40% lower risk of liver cancer. Similarly, one study of 489,706 people found that those who drank 4 to 5 cups of coffee per day had a 15% lower risk of colorectal cancer. It's often claimed that caffeine can increase your blood pressure. This is true, but it only increases it by 3 to 4 millimeters of mercury. The effect is small and it usually dissipates after you've been drinking coffee on a regular basis. However, it may persist in some people, so keep that in mind if you have elevated blood pressure. That being said, studies do not support the idea that coffee raises your risk of heart disease. On the contrary, there is some evidence that women who drink coffee have a reduced risk. Some studies also show that coffee drinkers have a 20% lower risk of stroke. Did I mention the Organic Man Coffee Trike? It's a health club, kind of. In order to make decaf, the manufacturers have to spend money on things other than the price of coffee. So as to not have to charge twice as much for decaf, they buy a really bad coffee. That's why decaf tastes like it was run through an old sweat sock. I hope I opened your eyes and got you ready to do some reading on your next trip to the grocery store. It's not that hard, and it only takes a few minutes to read what you're putting into your body, and more importantly, the bodies of your kids. Stop looking at Facebook on your phone while you're shopping and look up those weird ingredients that you're not too sure what they do. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Tell your friends. Hey, tell people on the street. Tell people you don't even know to listen to strange things. All of the past shows are now on YouTube. You can still find over 130 shows on Podomatic, and you can listen on just about any podcast server. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murder 3? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.